From WisPolitics in Madison, you're listening to Capital Chats.
Hello, everybody. This is Kate Morton with WisPolitics, here with a Capital Chats podcast brought to you by Spectrum. Today, I'm sharing an interview with Assembly Majority Leader Tyler August. He is a Republican from Walworth, and we spoke a little bit about the Assembly session and about the races going into the fall. Here's what he had to say. All right, well, thank you, Representative August, for doing this with me today on Capital Chats. I think to get us started off, let's just talk a little bit about the latest legislative session. So, what do you see as some of the biggest achievements that you've been able to get done this session?
Sure. I think the biggest, of course, is the bipartisan budget deal that we were able to negotiate out with the governor, between Republicans and the governor. I think we ended up in a really good place for the people of the state of Wisconsin. Not everybody got what they wanted, and not everybody loved everything that was in there, and that's really the sign of true compromise. So while there's a lot of chaos nationally, certainly in a lot of other states, I think that we're pretty proud of our ability to sit down with the governor and actually get something done positive for the people of the state.
Yeah, were there any big missed opportunities, things that you wish that you could have gotten to the finish line?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still, sitting with a surplus is not ideal for conservatives, for Republicans. We don't really like sitting on other people's money. But I would say that so far that's a missed opportunity, but it's also still an opportunity moving forward. I know we're still having some discussions with the governor here and there about coming to some sort of an agreement on that as well. So I don't want to call it a missed opportunity yet, because I'm ever the optimist that we can still go back to exactly what we did during the budget and sit down with the governor and work something out. So I'm still hopeful that that's going to happen.
Yeah, are there any updates on those talks at this point?
I think they're ongoing. The governor and his staff have been great to talk with. They obviously were in different parties for different reasons. They have different priorities than we do. So just working some of those details, it's hard work. It really is. But the fact that nobody's walked away from it yet, I think, is encouraging for both sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one of the bills that I wanted to ask you about in particular, when you co-authored to pave the way for online betting in Wisconsin, at least on tribal lands. Um, so you were able to get that across the finish line and signed into law. But there was some vocal opposition, four
Mhm.
Republicans registered against that in the Assembly. So what is your response to some of the criticisms about the way the Assembly approached getting that across the finish line?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I haven't heard a whole lot of criticisms of how we got that done, other than from the out of state, the big gaming association that has members like MGM Casinos, DraftKings, FanDuel's. They're really the ones that have been out there criticizing this. Which that is what it is. I mean, they parachuted in here out of DC, kind of misrepresenting what the whole discussion was actually about. I think for us, it really came down to um, online sports wagering is happening in Wisconsin, regardless if this bill had become law or not. And really, the question around this bill was, are we going to allow our tribal partners to engage in that same activity when, under the Constitution, they are the ones who have the gaming authority in our state? So are we going to allow them to legally do this? Or are we just going to continue to let it be the Wild West, where you have overseas companies that are certainly not regulated by anyone, or even prediction markets that are really just regulated at the federal level, and Wisconsin has had no ability to regulate those. So we have all of this all of this money flying around on gaming, and yet no one from Wisconsin's really benefiting from it. So I think it would have been a completely different argument and a different discussion if the bill was about, are we going to have online gaming in Wisconsin or not? But the fact is, it was already here. It is already here. And the discussion really should have been focused around, are we going to allow our tribal partners the opportunity to participate? And that was a lot of work too, to get both the Assembly and the Senate and the governor in the same place on that legislation. It like all big pieces of legislation, it lived and died 1,000 times. But we were able to get it across the end, and ultimately, I think it is the best thing for the people of the state.
Kind of on a similar topic, you mentioned the prediction markets issue. AG Call recently announced a lawsuit on this. Are you supportive of that?
I was interested to see that he's actually done that. I wasn't sure that he would. I mean, he's had a lot of time to. These prediction markets aren't new. I mean, some of the newer players are recently launching new ones, but there's been prediction market activity in Wisconsin for quite some time. So I'm not sure if it's related to his reelection campaign or what reason he has for doing it. But we'll see how that plays out in the courts, but it's certainly while it's in the same ballpark as this legislation, it is unrelated to the action that we
Sure.
took.
Yeah, another topic I wanted to ask you about, big switch up with Speaker Vos saying he's not going to be running for re-election. He's longest serving speaker in state history. I think you've served with him for most of your time in the assembly as well. Um, so how do you think his departure will switch up the dynamic in the Capitol?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as you said, he's the longest serving speaker in the history of the state. I think he's the best that's ever done it. I've only served with one other speaker for one term, so he's been the Speaker of the Assembly my entire legislative career and my entire time as part of the leadership team. So certainly big shoes to fill, but I mean, the good news is his phone still works. He's still active in the negotiations with the governor. He's active with me running our campaigns outside of the Capitol, and so he's somebody that has been here a long time, and he just decided that it was time for he and his family to not be in the whirlwind of politics anymore. And look, I think that people who know him know how much he cares about Assembly Republicans being in the majority, and knowing him like I do, if he wasn't confident in his leadership team, kind of taking over and passing the baton to us to continue the work that he started, he wouldn't be leaving. And so we know he has confidence in us. We have confidence in ourselves as a leadership team, and he's still there. Like I said, going to be there for advice. But we are confident in the team that we have, and we know we can be successful moving forward.
Yeah, so obviously you're the majority leader right now. Several Republicans have brought up your name to potentially lead the caucus once Voss has left. So are you hoping to take up that mantle when the time comes?
At the risk of sounding like giving a political answer, it just happens to be the truth. My focus is on the campaign cycle right now. Our whole leadership team has had great conversations about how we want to be focused on making sure that we can still hopefully get a deal across the finish line with the governor on the surplus, and also remain focused on our campaigns across the state. And so I've said both publicly and privately that that's going to be a caucus decision. I'm focused on my duties as the majority leader, which now with the departure of the speaker do include heading up our campaign operation. And so that literally is. I know it sounds like a political answer, but it also happens to be the absolute truth right now. That is what I'm focused on and what I will be focused on from now until November, and the rest of that will take care of itself after the elections.
Well, then switching gears on the campaign issues, there's going to be a high stakes race for control of the assembly this fall. So far, 8 assembly Republicans have they said that they aren't running for re-election, including Representative Coffert recently, who holds one of those key battleground districts. So, do you think that makes the path harder for Republicans to maintain control in the chamber?
I think if you look at the map that we were forced to accept by the state Supreme Court because they were going to gerrymander both houses into the minority, and so we accepted the map that the governor had proposed. I don't think anyone wanted to. I would also note that the Democrats also didn't want to because they didn't support it either when it was on the assembly floor. So I think the Democrats being opposed to this map means that they're concerned that they weren't able to gerrymander themselves into the majority as much as they would like. So that's number one. Number two, when you do look at the map and you look where we have strong incumbents and the sheer numbers of the seats, the math is still on our side. We feel very confident in our incumbents that are running for re-election, and we've got some great challengers that are going to be announcing here in the next couple of weeks to hold some of the Democrats accountable who pretend to be moderates but are actually just as far to the left as the city of Madison, and their voting record shows that. And so we'll look forward to highlighting that in those members' districts. And we are still confident in all of our candidates across the state in these competitive districts. And Assembly Republicans for decades, long before I was around, long before Speaker Vos was around, have always punched above their weight. We outperform the top of the ticket regularly. You don't have to go back any further than the last election cycle to show that. So we are very confident that we have the candidates and the resources, and frankly, we're correct on our message, our view of how the state of Wisconsin should be. We believe is the correct view that connects with normal everyday Wisconsinites that don't worry about the political fights in Madison. And so we are confident in our ability to hold on to the majority and continue to do good work as we have for decades.
Yeah, on another topic kind of related to that, so there have been some fundraising issues with the state party. The state Dem party raised about 10 times what the state GOP raised over about the first 3 months of the year. Do you feel like the state party is doing enough to prop up GOP candidates financially?
I think that we have just a different system than the Democrats do. I mean, Assembly Democrats rely on out-of-state billionaires to give money to their state party and trickle the money down to their campaigns and their candidates. We don't rely on that same system. Assembly Republicans, we have been powerful fundraisers for years and years. We continue to be, and again, that goes back to the fact that our values align with the values of everyday Wisconsinites, and that's why they're willing to support our campaigns. And so, sure, is there going to be billions of dollars, hundreds, at least tens of millions sent into the state from billionaires from outside of the state? But we've been dealing with that for, over the last 15 years. And so I'm not as concerned about that. We have a different structure. We are fully prepared to be successful. I think that when you look at the governor's campaign, it'll be the same thing where Tom Tiffany will be raising dollars, and the state party will provide the grassroots infrastructure that it always has. So I'm still very bullish on all of our candidates up and down the ballot heading into November, and I see no reason why we can't be successful.
Yeah, so you mentioned you're confident about holding control of the assembly. I'm wondering on the governor's side, how confident are you that you can flip that to Republicans?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really hopeful that we can do it. I mean, I've known Tom Tiffany for a long time. He was a classmate of mine in the 2010 assembly class. So we go way back. I just spoke with him at length the other day. I think he and his team have got a great plan. I think he's got a great message. And the party really is uniting around Tom Tiffany right now. You have all factions within the party. That's a big tent party, and everybody's rallying around Tom. On the other side of the aisle, you have the exact opposite, where they have primary opponents starting to snipe at each other. Nobody's really grabbed the mantle over there to say, I am the candidate. I am the one that can bring this party together. Their party continues to divide itself. And I think that's going to continue through August as you see no one candidate able to kind of separate him or herself from the rest of the pack. So they're going to spend their summer attacking each other and having a race to see who can be the furthest crazy progressive liberal that Wisconsinites just aren't on board with. And Tom Tiffany's going to be traveling the state talking about common sense issues that matter to voters. And so he's got a great opportunity to win this thing. And I'm going to be excited to work with him when he does.
Yeah, well, before we wrap it up, is there anything else you want to add that listeners should know going into the fall?
No, I think that they should have confidence in Assembly Republicans. As I said, we are built to win. We know how to win. And the voters have continued to side with us because we have a better vision for the future of the state, and we expect that they'll continue to side with us and return Assembly Republicans with a comfortable majority to continue running the state assembly here in Wisconsin.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Of course, glad to do it. Thanks for having me.
All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to WisPolitics Capital Chats. If you'd like to hear more about the assembly session or upcoming races, please head to our website at wispolitics.com. In the meantime, I'm Kate Morton. This is WisPolitics Capital Chats, brought to you by Spectrum.